This is the Puma Fast-R DVA Nitro 2. And it begs the question, does it matter what a shoe looks like if it's fast? Yo, what's going on? My name is fwiw and I'm a non-elite runner who reviews shoes here on YouTube. And today I'm going to talk to you guys about the Puma Fast R2. Now, before I give my thoughts on these shoes, I do want to go over some disclosures. This is a pair of shoes that Puma sent to me for the purpose of review, so I did not have to pay for these shoes. However, they're not paying me to make this video or to use the shoe, and they're not going to get a chance to preview any of my footage or my thoughts before you guys get a chance to see this video on YouTube. So with that disclosure out of the way, let's talk about the Puma Fast R2, and let's start with the specs. This is a 40mm stack height shoe, the max allowable as far as World Athletics racing rules go, and it's got an 8mm drop, giving us 32mm of stack height in the forefoot. And in this midsole, there is a lot to talk about here. Same as last year, there's still this decoupled forefoot and rear portion of the shoe in the heel, and there is an exposed carbon fiber plate, but they've made a change not only to the stack height, it's 4mm taller both in the heel and in the forefoot than last year, but they've also switched out the foam entirely. They're still calling this Nitro Elite foam, but whereas it used to be a Puma-based foam, at least in the forefoot, now it is using an aliphatic TPU foam that is using a light or non-compression molded technique. Let me break that down. In terms of the foam, it's a super critical process in the terms of there is a base material, like a puck of material, and then they apply pressure and then a gas, and that whole thing just starts to expand into the shape of the mold. And you basically pop it out of the mold, do a little bit of cleanup, and then it goes into the shoe. This new way is a little bit different. Instead of making a single mold per shoe, they make one big mold. They make a sheet of this midsole foam material. So it's a larger puck into a larger space, but instead of having some of the crevices and all of the kind of edges and corners, they just make this giant big sheet and then cut the midsole foams out of the big sheet. Kind of like, in my mind, like stamping cookies out of rolled out cookie dough. And after that, then they put it into some light compression. I'm not exactly sure how this part works, but in order to get all these ridges and the exact shape, it does get a little bit of compression in there. So it is less like typical supercritical foam creation that you've seen in other super shoes, and it's more like the non-compression molded super foam that we saw in the Adidas Adios Pro Evo 1. And the whole point of all that is to be able to provide a couple of things. It provides a midsole foam that is kind of airier, that has more kind of space between the plastic parts that are in it, so that way there's more room for the foam to travel as it's being compressed. And because it's less dense, after it's compressed, that foam wants to respond back and give back all the energy that was put into it after it has been compressed. So the decompression should be much more pronounced in these types of foams. But here's the other thing that's unique about the way that Puma is implementing this type of foam into this particular shoe. Unlike the Adios Pro Evo 1, which a lot of people have been rightfully criticizing for basically being a single-use shoe with an anticipated one race lifespan, Puma is telling me that this foam should be able to retain its race day properties up to the 250 mile mark. So not only is it intended to give us a premier super foam experience, it's going to give it to us at a high level of durability. It's pretty amazing if that holds out to be true. Now, to protect some of this foam, we've got a generous helping of that Puma grip rubber on the forefoot of the shoe, and we've even got a couple of pods here to protect what's going on in the heel. Moving to the upper, we have Puma's Ultra Weave, which is a very strong material. It's going to help keep you locked into place, a very comfortable tongue portion, and a mostly floppy heel, except for this stabilizing element, this tail fin that's on the back here. Altogether, this comes at a respectable super shoe weight of 240 grams or 8.4 ounces. All right, now that we talked about the paper specs, let's put the rubber to the road and talk about what it was like to actually run in this shoe. And I gotta tell you, this foam is absolutely lovely. I'm really enjoying this aliphatic TPU, whatever it is that they're doing with this shoe, non-compression molded, lightly compression molded, whatever it is that they did to make this shoe, I think it feels fantastic. I've always had a hard time with Puma racing shoes, wondering if I could take it to the marathon distance, but this shoe definitely can. Part of it is the increased stack height, but it's definitely coming down to the foam. I ran threshold mile repeats in this shoe, and the shoe definitely responds very well to that level of effort that I'm putting into it. Half marathon effort running also feels really nice and smooth. It doesn't feel jarring. This decoupled heel and forefoot doesn't feel like it's a big distraction, and it doesn't feel like it's a gimmick. It just feels like a really nice shoe underfoot. Those of you who are a bit more of a heel striker might notice it a bit more than I do, but I just felt like this was a really great shoe that was working well for me. The shoe compressed nicely whenever my foot hit the ground to absorb impact, but then it also gave it all right back to me. I felt the carbon, which is very rigid in this shoe, and then I also felt that nice foam decompressing to give me that wonderful pop that I felt with each stride. And I also feel like when you're slowing down even a little more from threshold pace to half marathon pace to marathon pace, I feel like the shoes can also kind of set it and forget it and help you lock into that marathon effort. It's just a much more stable shoe than it looks like too. I think that the landing pad that they have here is nice and generous, so there's plenty of shoe to land on. And even though it looks like there's only this little tiny peg, almost like a high heel that you're landing on in the heel, I felt like this shoe was much more stable in the heel than a lot of other super shoes that I've been running in lately. And so it was a really nice surprise for this shoe. Overall, in pretty much every dimension, I think Puma has a serious contender in the super shoe category for 2024. Oh, and the one last thing that I'll mention, this underbite, I feel like this is something that actually does work, but I didn't personally notice it until I was running faster than threshold pace, like 5K pace, maybe doing some strides that are even faster than that. That's the only time where I'm really toeing off enough where I can really feel like this makes a difference. And when I can feel this little underbite portion of that extended carbon fiber plate, it is really nice to push off of. All right, now that we've taken a look at this shoe by itself, let's start talking about where it could fit in a rotation of shoes, and also what are the buying recommendations and some competition that you might want to also consider. Now, if you are looking to put this shoe at the top of your shoe rotation as your race day shoe, I think you could put together a really nice rotation of shoes using only Puma running. And so for me, if this was your race day shoe, I think like a tempo day shoe or a light workout shoe that you can certainly reach for is the Puma Deviate Nitro 2. This was my favorite shoe of 2023. It's got the old version of Nitro Elite foam in here with a little bit of the regular Nitro foam in the heel, and it's also got a carbon fiber plate. So it's got a nice level of squishiness to it for some easy runs, but it also has some spring and pop when you do need to pick up the pace just a little bit more. And for your recovery runs and your easy runs, I think that you can reach for the Puma Forever Run. Now this is technically a neutral shoe. It's like a neutral slash stability kind of shoe, but for me, it just feels like a comfortable max cushion relaxed shoe. This is also using supercritical foams. There's actually a nitro foam carrying an even softer foam inside it, and you can kind of see it through some of the holes on the bottom of the shoe. That's going to be a really great one for those days when you want to pamper yourself just a little bit extra. Now let's talk about the buying guide for this shoe. It's going to be coming in at $260 when it releases, and I feel like that is a really good price for what you are getting in this shoe, especially if you're going to be able to get the durability that Puma is claiming. Now I'll keep running in this shoe. I'll try to run in it longer than I normally do for super shoes, so stay tuned and hit the subscribe button for that so we could see how this shoe progresses over the extra high mileage that I'm hoping to be able to put into it. But at the $260 price point, let's see what else is in the market that I think delivers a relatively similar experience to that. The first shoe that I'll talk about is the Endorphin Pro 3. This is a shoe that's been out for a little while now. I think the Endorphin Pro 4 is coming around the corner, but for now, the Endorphin Pro 3, I think, reminds me a lot of what's going on in the Puma Fast R2. I feel like the Endorphin Pro 3 is just a little bit less aggressive. There's a little bit more softness in the forefoot. There's a little bit less aggressiveness to the carbon. And I feel like the fit overall is much more accommodating than the race fit of the Puma Fast R2. This shoe also happens to have a little bit of a channel cut out in the forefoot, and I really appreciate that it's there. It's one of the most comfortable super shoes that I've come across in recent memory, but it's also one that I find to be really exciting and easy for me to recommend to a wide variety of people. This shoe comes in at $225 still, although hopefully it'll be going on sale soon to the extent that there's any inventory left to sell because of that upcoming Endorphin Pro 4 release, which I'm not sure exactly when it is, but it'll probably be within the next month or couple of months here. Now, the other shoe that I think warrants comparison to the Puma Fast R2, and this may be an indication of just how much I like the Fast R2, is that I think it competes against the Asics Metaspeed Sky really well. Now, I do think that the FF Turbo foam that's in the Metaspeed Sky Plus is going to be a little bit less compressive. It doesn't feel like you're moving it quite as much, so there's a little bit more firmness to this foam, but this foam also has a much quicker snap back in terms of how much that foam decompresses. And while both of these shoes do have a really generous landing pad in the forefoot, the heel in the back of the Metaspeed Sky Plus is much narrower. So for those of you who need a little bit more substance to land on in the back of the shoe, might be reaching for the Fast R2. But for those of you that like a shoe that can be a little bit twitchy and feels a little bit lighter on foot, still might be leaning towards the Metaspeed Sky Plus. But both of these two shoes do a really great job of providing a very snappy feeling that can go for your fastest races, but can also handle the rigors of marathon racing as well. The Metaspeed Sky Plus comes in at $250, so $10 less than the Fast R2. That shoe also, it's 2024, it's an Olympic year, so pretty much all the super shoes are gonna be getting updates for this year, but that shoe should be updating sometime in the next few months as well. But for now, you can find it for $250, also a really great option. So those are my thoughts on the Puma Fast R2, a fantastic way to launch 2024 from Puma. Really excited for what else they're going to be bringing down through the rest of the year. If you have any other questions about this shoe or any of the shoes that I talked about, feel free to put them in the comments down below. Or better yet, stop by the live stream that I do Monday through Friday over on the Kofuzi Run Club channel. I'd love to talk to you guys over there in the chat. That's all I have for today, everybody. Thanks so much for making it all the way to the end of this video. Hopefully you guys are staying safe out there on your runs, and I will see you in the next one.
Yo, what's going on?